Hello and welcome once more to Conscious TV. My name is Iain McNay and our guest today is Nurit Oren. Hi Nurit.
Hello.
Nurit's written a book which is called The Blind Leading the Blonde on the Road to Freedom, Confessions of a Recovering Spiritual Junkie. It's quite a thin book, but there's a lot said in here and it's I found it quite interesting, and it obviously the basis of our interview today. So Nurit, when you were born in Israel, and when you were young, you were allowed to kind of roam free. Just tell us about that briefly.
Yes, well, I was born in a kibbutz, and at the time when the Israel was just being developed and built. My parents were pioneers. They came in '48 and they started building the country and the settlements. And so at that time, children didn't live with the parents. The kids lived in the children's home, and we just saw the parents for afternoon tea or saying goodnight before bed. So we were wild. Everything was wild. We would run around with the dogs, play in the mud, wear clothes, not wear clothes. I don't remember even owning a pair of shoes. I was always running around and picking flowers, picking a cucumber or pepper out of the ground and eating it. It was very free life.
So in a way that gave you a great grounding for your life because of this freedom, and you could just be yourself.
It gave me a love for freedom, an appetite for freedom, because very soon after that, my freedom was taken away.
So what happened?
We moved to Canada only for 3 years. My father wanted to go back to school. And all of a sudden, here I am in civilization. From this free being running around naked all the time, I had to wear shoes and socks and a winter coat. It was Canada, it was cold. There was discipline. I had parents that I was living with. Now my brother was there. I had grandparents. There were rules and laws and spankings and scoldings. And where did this come from? I wasn't used to that at all. And of course, learning a new language and then starting school. So all of a sudden, from being allowed to be, there was all these molds put on me. And that really ignited my desire I longed for that freedom that I had. Again, that's what I thought freedom was, because that was my only experience of it.
Okay, so a lot happened in your first few years. You had a kind of experience of freedom, bliss in some ways maybe, and
absolutely.
Then you were controlled. So you had it's interesting because you had, in a fairly short space of time, you had the experience of very different types of worlds.
Totally.
Which gave you at least a comparison of what things could be like.
Yes, yes.
So you moved back to Israel after some time in Canada, and how was it then?
It was very difficult because I forgot all my Hebrew coming back. So because I learned English when I was in Canada, and so I forgot all my Hebrew. I came back, and all of a sudden, once again, I'm learning a new language. And kids could be very cruel. It was very difficult in school to get readjusted again. But somehow, you know, that fire in my belly was always there.
Yes.
To find the freedom, and then eventually I ended up going to the Israeli army, and that was, oh my God, there again goes my freedom. It was like, talk about rules and regiments.
But just to mention before that, your father was actually a policeman in Israel, wasn't he?
Yes,
so
he
there
was.
was a kind of authority there.
Yeah, well, he was a mix. He, on the one hand, at the daytime, he was a policeman, a detective.
Okay.
And a very good one and very strict. At the same time, he was an artist.
Okay.
At night, he had his studio, and he would go and do his art, his sculpture. So he had some kind of a free spirit in him, but it was very back and forth-ish.
Yes. Yeah. So you joined the army, and you were stationed in Gaza, weren't you?
Yes, the worst place you could be.
Yeah.
It was very, very dangerous. Sometimes it was too dangerous to even come home for the weekend. So, but the blessing of that time, again, it was the contrast. I seemed to learn a lot through contrast, because the contrast was so big. On the one hand, I had so little freedom. I had to eat what they fed me. I had to wake up when they told me to. I had to go to bed when they told me to. I had to do all the stuff that they told me to do. No personal will, no personal agenda whatsoever. At the same time, my father gave me the book Siddhartha.
By Hermann Hesse.
By Hermann Hesse. And I'm reading about this yogi who's traveling around and looking for himself. And I couldn't put the book down. I said, that's what I want. That to me meant freedom now. I knew that that was where my freedom was. And so I longed for that even more. And having the contrast of being in the army was just very difficult. I had to drink myself to sleep every night. I had a whole bottle of vermouth so I could sleep at night. It was very tough.
So were you, with the army, were you actually on duty and having to shoot at people? Or?
That was just in the training we had to learn to shoot.
Yes.
The other part in Gaza, a lot of it was clerical work, and some of it was being a witness in the prisons, where with the women's prison, to be a witness to make sure that they're not being sexually harassed or hurt in any way.
So it could have been worse, your role in the army. You weren't instructed to shoot at people.
No.
Yeah. So and how was your relationship with your colleagues in the army at that time? So here you were reading Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha, and they're presumably coming from a very different background.
Very, and I kind of, at that point already, I started to lose interest in conventional life. I did not care for the regular, all my friends finished high school and went to learn psychology or sociology or the acceptable things to learn, and all talked about, one day having a family and kids and da-da-da-da and all that stuff. I lost interest in that. I was very much interested in finding myself and going to India one day and becoming a yogi. And my friends there, I guess I was more of a leader type person, because what ended up happening is I used to sit on my bunk. I was in a top bunk, and I used to read it out loud to everybody. So they were kind of forced into it in spite of themselves. They had to sit and listen to my reading of Siddhartha. Of course, it was in English, and so some of them understood it, some of them I had to translate it for them and explain what I was reading. So it was like a satsang.
Okay, so you left the army. What happened then?
I became a hippie. I moved into a commune. My brother was part of it, and they're all musicians and actors, and they're all seeking in one way or the other. We were all on drugs, trying different things like LSD, mushrooms, hash, whatever was available. Nothing addictive. I was always careful not to do anything that was addictive, because again, I always felt that would take away my freedom more than anything. And we got high, and people used to read some books of Baba Ram Das at that time, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and a good friend from United States came to visit us. His name was Israel, and he's a saxophone player, and he told us all about India. He was headed towards India. And eventually he went to India, and that's how I found about the ashram in India.
Which ashram was that?
That's the ashram of Swami Muktananda.
Okay.
Not too far from Bombay.
So you went to India, to the ashram.
Yes.
How was that when you got there?
The funny thing is, it was such a pull. At that time, before that, I was living with my boyfriend, who was a drummer and an actor. And we separated, and I felt like I needed something. I felt like my thirst for freedom and for love or peace or something was so strong that I went to visit some friends, because they had books of every kind. They had Ramtha, they had Baba Ram Das, they had every spiritual book. This was just the turn into the 70s, early 70s. Every spiritual book that existed they had. I went through their wall, And they had a wall as big as this here and full of books. I went through every book, looked at it, not too intellectual. Another one, not too intellectual. So finally I was ready to go home. But just before I went home, I had to go to the washroom. And there on the floor were 2 books by Swami Muktananda. And he had this look about him. His eyes were full of love. And underneath it, the picture, it said, "There's boundless love within. Go within and find it." And that triggered something in me, because I've had, I was starting to become more and more aware that the love that people talk about or the love that people experience isn't for real, because it ends. I couldn't believe that something that ends, or something that ends in hatred, could be real. Something felt totally wrong about that, to the point that I one day, prior to this experience, I went to the Wailing Wall. And you know, in the Wailing Wall, people write little notes and stick them in. And what I wrote in my note is that I wanted to find the real love, the God's love, the kind that is lasting, the kind that is divine.
You actually wrote, quote from your book, "I want to find true love, divine love, the love of God that is pure, unchanging and everlasting."
Exactly.
There's a depth in that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Mm.
And I actually had an experience of that in a dream very shortly after that, in a dream where I was awake. Within the dream, I was completely awake and everything was black, pitch black. There was nothing, complete void. No sound, no sight, nothing. There was just a presence. And I was questioning what that presence was, not with words. It was not even the realm of words. It was communication in silence is the best way I could talk about it. And so I asked what it was, and it said, not in words, the answer was that it was the power of love, and that all I would ever need, and all that is ever needed in this life, is love. But I didn't know how to access that. I didn't know, okay, so, all right, so now what? Who's going to show me that? Who's going to teach me that? How am I going to learn that? And that's where, when I saw Muktananda's picture, and he wrote, "There's boundless love within, go within and find it," he has the answer. I was convinced he had the answer to say that, and he looked very loving in the picture. So I immediately decided to go. I had a little money from an inheritance, and everyone tried to stop me. My father tried to stop me, my boyfriend tried to stop me, he wanted me back. My best friends wanted to stop me. I was offered a house, fully paid for house, my entire education paid for, a trip around the world, you name it, I was promised. But it was this pull that there's nothing you could do. When you have that pull, you just go. So within 3 weeks, I went. 3 weeks of finding the books, I went to India.
And how was it when you got there?
It was very different.
Yeah.
Nothing could have prepared me for that experience. It was Muktananda, we called him Baba. He was larger than life. The lifestyle was very austere at that time. It isn't anymore, but it used to be. There was a dormitory full of women, or in another dormitory full of men. We were separated. We had to walk barefoot. The bathrooms were like 2 blocks away. We had to walk in the dark. There were scorpions you had to watch out for. I mean, it was very austere life. We had to get up at 3 in the morning, meditate for hours, chant for hours, work in the fields in the sun, hot sun of India for hours. It was very austere. A lot of people didn't make it. I felt for me it was a little bit easier because of the discipline in the army prepared me for such a life. And the Muktananda was larger than life. He had tremendous energy. He was very charismatic. He was very beautiful. And his teaching, well, he said wonderful things. He said things like, kneel to yourself, worship your own self, because God dwells within you as you, which I resonated with. It felt right. Unfortunately, he also said other things that I didn't realize at the time were misleading. like, you can have all this, you will become enlightened. So he talked about waking up and being enlightened by going within. But there's a catch. First, you have to worship the guru, you have to serve the guru, you have to please the guru, and only in the future, when the guru is pleased with you, then you might receive it. So if it's within, at that time I didn't realize this, but now looking back, if it was within, if it was my birthright, why does somebody else have to give it to me? Why does it have to be in the future if it's already inside me?
But at the time,
I didn't
you were
know.
committed.
I was committed, and that's the danger of partial truth.
Yes, but let's not go to that
Yeah.
just yet. There was a commitment there.
Absolutely.
How did you feel that commitment?
I wanted the experience of finding that true love, what I wrote in the note. I
Yes.
wanted it so badly.
Yes.
I was willing to do anything.
Yes.
And it was very easy for me at that time to hear what I wanted to hear that I will get it. And because I was being trained that I will get it by pleasing the guru, that became my life's mission, to serve my guru, to please him in any way I could. I was waking up very early, even earlier than 3 o'clock in the morning, at 2 sometimes, forgetting about the meditation. I felt the meditation was for me. I had to do something for him.
Yeah.
I used to work day and night just so that I can please him enough so that he would say, okay, you've earned it. Now I give it to you.
So you thought that freedom, enlightenment, self-realization, whatever we call it, that was something that had to be earned
Yes,
via a guru, and he
That's
was the
right.
one
That's
that had to
right.
say yes or no.
that's right. And that's
Yeah.
what we were taught.
Yes. And what was your gut feeling at the time?
Yearning, tremendous.
yearning, yeah.
The yearning never stopped. I
Yes.
would stand in front of his picture sometimes and cry and cry and cry, and I would just say, kill me or give it to me. But I can't live like this without this. This yearning had to be satiated somehow. It was very, very intense. The problem is, though, when you start, I see it now. I kind of saw part of it, but I didn't know why it was happening. My ego, my spiritual ego, became very, very big. It was being fed by the activity, being fed by all this mental activity and the so-called achievements. If I succeeded in doing something good and he was pleased, there was this pat on the back. There was, I'm getting better. I'm a great yogini. I can get up at 3 in the morning, no problem. I can renounce this, I can renounce
You see,
that.
the interesting thing, Nurit, is that you were very much, seems that you very much fixed on this path of, you knew you wanted it.
Yes.
And that's admirable, and I think anyone probably watching conscious TV will, or most people will know this feeling that you really want.
Yes.
They really want this freedom,
Yes.
this feeling that they found themselves, and that was
Yeah.
very real in you. But
Yes.
what you're saying now, looking back in a retrospective way, was that in a way, it was never going to happen
That's
in
right.
this situation. But that at the time
Yeah.
was the way you did it. You went. The Western people went to the East.
Yeah.
They surrendered and they worked hard and they went along with the rules of the ashram.
Yeah.
And that was the gateway, wasn't it?
It seemed like that would be the gateway,
Yes.
only it wasn't really.
Yes.
It couldn't, and like you said, is absolutely right, it could never happen. A, because there was something to happen in the future, and B, it was not my experience, it was his experience. Everything that I learned was based on his experience. It was hearsay, it wasn't mine.
So what do you feel, looking back on that time, what do you feel you got out of it?
What I got out of it is discipline. What I got out of it is that it intensified my yearning. It intensified my love. I did feel tremendous amounts of love. Unfortunately, though, there was also things that I got out of it that weren't helpful. And that's the spiritual ego, which is what happens.
Yeah. Like a competitiveness between you and the other disciples.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Constant. I
Yeah.
would constantly look around, who's working harder than me? Who does he like more? Oh my
Yeah.
God, he gave her a flower, he didn't give me one. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Anyway, to continue the story, you came back to, was it Israel or Canada? You went to Israel, and you opened a centre based around his teachings.
Yes, yes.
And then you had various people come there, and then you fell in love with one of the disciples that came there.
That's right, yes.
But even that you felt guilty about, didn't you?
Terribly. I was going to be a monk. I thought that I had to be a monk. To me, becoming a monk meant that you give yourself entirely. You renounce everything, and you become, in order to be with God. That's what it meant to me. I looked at it from a spiritual point of view. I learned later that some of the monks didn't. To them, it was a move up in their career. But for me, it meant giving myself to God. And then at that time, when I was living in Israel, Muktananda was in the West, and he started to marry couples up. Before that, he spoke against marriage. Now he was talking for marriage. So I thought, oh, maybe this is the new trend. And all of a sudden, my husband at that time showed up, and I fell in love with him, and we got married. But there was this tremendous guilt. Did I do the right thing?
Mm. It's difficult, isn't it, the spiritual path sometimes? You don't have the clarity.
What makes it difficult is the spiritual concepts.
Yes.
They block the door all the time. And even though my yearning was intensifying because I wasn't being fulfilled, at the same time I was building on top, concept on top of concept on top of concepts, and those become blocks, and we don't even realize it. But just like we're trained in childhood to think in a certain way, that if you're good, you get a nice candy. If you're bad, you get punished. I was being trained spiritually. I was trained with all these concepts. If you do this, you will get enlightened. If you do that, you'll be in bondage. You'll be a material person, and on it goes.
So you had a child with your husband, and then there was something that really affected you. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a bit. Muktananda died, and that was a shock for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, at that time it was the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved him. I loved him very much, and he was my object. He was my God. He was the key. He was my key to finding God, and then he died. I didn't achieve it yet. I was still as bound as ever, and he left. I was furious.
So where did that leave you?
It left me very confused, very, very confused. Fortunately, there was one of the swamis in the ashram. I was living in the ashram in Vancouver, and he was very helpful. He would read to me from Nisargadatta a lot at that time. And so that helped a little bit. But then the successor came, Muktananda, one of the successors.
There was two, wasn't there?
There were two at first, and then they had a huge fallout, and the two had become one. They went their separate ways.
Yes.
But I felt an obligation to Baba because I still didn't get it. I wasn't enlightened yet, hadn't achieved it. I assumed that I should follow his lead, what he set out. He decided that they should be the successors, therefore I must follow them. But that didn't last long.
That was Guru Maya.
That was Guru Maya.
Yeah, you didn't have a good experience with her.
No, I didn't connect with her, and I didn't feel the same way. And my longing by then was so strong because it didn't happen with Muktananda. It was so bad that I got terrible depression. I would just wander in the forest. At that time I lived in upstate New York and the Catskill Mountains, and I would wander in the forest and cry and cry. It was almost like a guilt, like I know by now I should have gotten it. I've been here for long. I worked my ass off, pardon my expression. I did all the right things. I followed everything. I chanted. I did everything right. Why am I not my own being? It was as if my inner being was calling out to me, and something was not letting me hear it. Very intense.
Because one night you had this dream, didn't you, where you, if I can find that quickly here in the notes, you had a dream of you crawled into Muktananda's grave?
Yes, that was because of all the confusion that was going around at that time between the brother and the sister, Guru Mai and her brother.
But he said something to you that was very significant.
Yes, yes.
Do you remember what that was?
Yes, I do. He said you must always follow your own experience.
You must always follow your own experience.
Only trust your own experience
Only
and follow
trust
it. Yes.
your own experience.
But you see, I didn't know what that was. I didn't have my own experience except for the longing. There was nothing. He was my model, and he was gone. There was. What does that mean? My own experience. I didn't know what my taste in food was. I ate what we ate in the ashram. I didn't know what my taste in music was. I didn't know what that experience was. We were chanting in the ashram. I didn't know what my experience was. I gave my life to him, assuming that he was the God that will help me find my own godhood. But I didn't know what that was yet. But it was kind of like a light to guide me in the future.
And then your husband became a guru.
Yes. He became a guru once while Muktananda was still alive, and that didn't go too well. He was creamed for that. But then after we separated, he became a guru.
Yeah. How was that for you?
I felt like that's what he always wanted. I wasn't even... I actually was surprised myself that I wasn't judging him for it, because I felt like that's what he wanted and that's what he got.
Yes.
I didn't believe in it, but that was his thing.
But it's another kind of, for me, and I'm sure for you understand as well, it's another kind of example of where somewhere you gave your power away. Maybe that's...
No, I never gave my power away to him totally. Not so much to my husband. I rebelled very much again, because I didn't like being married, and I didn't like his whole trip. It was okay for him because that's what he wanted, but it wasn't okay for me. And it also showed me how, even at that time, you see, Muktananda wrote a book that everyone followed, and it was about his spiritual experiences. You see the red light, and then you see the white light, and you travel to these worlds and that world, and you visit your ancestors, or you go to heaven and hell and all these things, and you finally have the final vision. So my husband followed that, and he assumed he had some of those experiences, and he got very deluded. He thought that was enlightenment. So he assumed he was enlightened, and he claimed to be an incarnation of one of the Indian sages. So to me, that was okay. That to me was very deluded. But then again, I was deluded in my own way.
And then you found another teacher called Dr. Mills. This is in Toronto.
Yes.
And with him for 15 years.
Yes.
Was he different at all from...
Totally.
Yeah.
Everything was different.
So
Everything was different. It wasn't so much a chanting or devotional. He was more of an artist. He was a musician, a concert pianist. He used to be, and then he conducted a group of singers. He painted. He did fashion design. He wrote books. He lectured spontaneously. Poetry would just come out of his mouth spontaneously. And he was able to articulate things that my previous teacher wasn't able to. And from what I understood from what he was saying, it sounded like this was it. This was the truth. And everything that I learned before with a future expectation, a future promise, was on a psychic level. It really felt like even the kundalini awakening and all the visions that I had all of those that people talk about. It felt that those were on a psychic level, on a mental level. Whereas now, I was really getting into the real stuff. Again, partial truth, because what he was saying, a lot of it was true. But why wasn't it instantaneous? Why wasn't it happening now when he said that there's only one event, and that is now? So the words didn't correspond with the actual practices, which were studying for hours everything that he said and all his books, looking up every word in the dictionary, not just the big Webster dictionary, but in the Indo-European root dictionary, dissecting and analyzing everything.
But you stayed there for 15 years.
Yes, I was fascinated. You see, in hindsight, what I see, the mind loves to be impressed, and it follows what impresses it most. With Baba, I was so impressed with his power, the Shakti we call it, and all of that. With Dr. Mills, I was so impressed with his words. I thought anyone who can articulate things like that, anyone whose poetry can just flow like that, anyone who can paint the way he did, anyone who composed the way he did, has got to be enlightened. What I didn't realize at the time is that, yes, he probably had moments of presence, moments of enlightenment. He would have had to in order to be that creative. But what was celebrated was the creation and not the place where it came from.
But I'm more interested in what was happening for you at the time.
Well, that's what happened.
No, but
yeah.
I mean, did you experience presence? Did you experience your being? Was there, in spite of looking back on it in a retrospective way and seeing that it was off to some degree, what did you get out of it at the time?
At the time, my English improved. I'm sorry, you know, I had to learn to keep a job because everything costs a lot of money to be around him, and I learned to recite. I wrote a book. I learned to recite. I could explain everything that he said, but it was intellectual. I didn't know it at the time, but I learned to articulate. I learned how to use words. That's what he was teaching me.
But what was happening to this drive, this yearning in you that you talked about?
It was still present. It was still present. And what was, I would feel it sometimes when I was with him, because he was larger than life again, and he would speak like unbelievably beautifully. And when he spoke, sometimes my mind would stop. But you see, I would have moments of presence, but there was no one there telling me, that's the experience, that's your being, that is what you're looking for. No one ever said that to me. I didn't know. I thought that I'm feeling that because I'm with him.
Okay.
And I would go into agony when he wasn't around. When will he come back? I would sit by the phone and wait for an invitation to be around him because I believed that that would only happen if I was with him. I was jealous of him. He has himself all the time. Why can't I have it? I didn't know how to access it. I didn't know how to turn it on for myself. Again, it came from someone else. And again, it was a future attainment.
Mm. And then he died.
Yeah, horrible. Another devastating.
Yeah.
My life was, I thought my life was over.
So you'd been on the spiritual path for 40 years.
By then, almost 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, my search could never stop. I was still yearning, but I knew at that time that I can no longer have a guru. I knew that I had to feel it for myself. And I didn't know what that was. Again, I didn't know what my experience was. All the time, first my experience was based on Muktananda's experience, then it was based on Dr. Mills's experience and what happened there. My diet, I didn't even know what I liked to eat anymore. I didn't know what I liked to wear. Nothing. So I started to find even the day-to-day stuff, what I was all about. And I started going to course after course after course, which really annoyed me in a way, because when I started with Dr. Mills after Muktananda, I was under the impression that now I found the truth. Now my search was over. I didn't even realize that I was still searching. So when Dr. Mills died, I thought, why am I still searching? If I've been in 15 years with a teacher and I was telling everybody that now I'm not a searcher, I'm a finder, why am I going to courses? Why am I reading other books? I couldn't look at Dr. Mills' books anymore, and I don't know why, but for some reason I just couldn't look at it anymore. I started to go to coaching courses, law of attraction courses, matrix energetic courses. I did everything. Read books, seminars, everything. The yearning was still there, but I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why is it still there if I've been through all these teachings. Surely the second one couldn't have been, it had to have been a real one.
And then you met Gabor.
Yes. It was a fascinating experience. At first, shortly after Dr. Mills passed, I had this dream, kept coming over and over and over again. Consistent, every few weeks or months I would have this. I didn't see a person, but there was again a presence, and I was being embraced. It was a male presence, and I was being embraced. And as soon as I was being embraced, I felt complete silence, complete stillness. Like I can't even, words don't do it justice. It was such stillness and peace that it wasn't even joy. It was like a nothing, a peaceful nothing. And I felt fantastic afterwards. And every now and then I would look around and I feel like it was somewhere. Somehow I knew that I would recognize the man I was supposed to be with because he would give me that feeling. And I don't know why I felt that, but I started to be interested in a relationship because by then I was almost 18 years alone. And I wasn't interested at all in remarrying or having any, I never even dated since my husband left, and that was already 13 years by then. And then one day we met at a meetup, and I heard the name Gabor Harsani I saw his name through an email, and I was convinced that he was Persian. With that name, Gabor Harsani, I thought it was Persian. And we met at Starbucks, and I'm looking for a Persian guy, and there's no Persian guy anywhere. All of a sudden, a reddish blonde hair guy comes in with a thick accent, definitely not Persian accent, I would have recognized that, and says, "Hello, I'm Gabor, you must be Nurit." And I said, "I thought you were Persian." He said, "No, I'm Hungarian." And we hit it off. I mean, he was telling me about his path, I was telling him about my path, and we went out for about a month. And I couldn't believe, I've never met anyone who listened the way he did. I didn't know it at the time, but in hindsight, I know that it was silence, inner silence. My words were just pouring into that inner silence. But he never interrupted. He never tried to superimpose his opinion on me. He never tried to impress me. And that was totally unusual for anyone. Who doesn't try to impress in one way or the other, in any situation, not just relationships? And there was something about him, and I didn't know what. But I was also, in hindsight, I was terrified of him. Something within me knew that's the end of the line. That whatever he was about was the end of the line. It was the end of the search. My mind, or something in me, my ego, by the time I met him, my ego was humongous, as big as this room. I had so much spiritual pride, and spiritual pride is the worst. There's nothing worse than that. And so I couldn't really see who was in front of me, although somehow it must have been from the longing that I still had recognized something in him, to the point of wanting to be with him, but at the same time scared to death. So I called it off. And for the next 2.5 years, we just kept bumping into each other once in a while in singles events. And I don't know how, but it just happened. And we tried one more time to get together, it didn't work. And then in one event, he literally pulled the rug out from under my feet. And I was talking about what I was doing, law of attraction and all that, and he was talking about what he was about, and I didn't get what he was about. And at one point he said, you know, what you're doing is fine, only what you're doing is in the mind, and what I'm doing is not. And I was livid. I was furious. I said, how can somebody tell me that? How could that be? For the last 15 years before, with Dr. Mills, I was studying, we called it metaphysics. Metaphysics is beyond meta, beyond the physical. Beyond. To me, it was beyond the mind. Dr. Mills talked about going beyond the mind. How could it be that I'm still in the mind? But it angered me so much that something felt like, if I'm getting so upset and so reactive, there must be some truth in it. But I didn't want to look at it. And I kept finding faults with him, like he's wearing the same shirt twice in a row, he's wearing sandals with socks, you know.
And then what happened?
And then 2.5 years later, I suddenly felt, I don't know why, I said, I have to see him, I have to call him. I don't know why, but I have to call him. So I did, and he was surprised, just as much as I was, and we decided to meet that evening. And on the way to meeting him, I realized that the only reason I wasn't getting who he really was, even though intuitively I felt there was something very unusual there, I felt it's because my mind was interfering. My mind was making me judge him instead of seeing him as he is. I was seeing him through all the spiritual filters that I had. So on the way to meeting him, I stopped the car and started to do a kind of a meditation. I don't know what it was, but intuitively I felt, I'm just going to sit here and be. I'm not going to allow one thought to come in. I'm just going to be. I'm going to feel. I started going into feeling. I feel my butt on the chair. I feel myself. I feel my body. I feel. No thinking, just feeling. And I made the best commitment to myself that I've ever made in my life. And that was, when I see him, I'm not going to allow myself to think or view him in any way but what is actually there. No judgment, no thought whatsoever. I'm going to keep my mind completely still. And so when we met, I finally realized that I saw something there. And at the end of the evening, when he hugged me, it was just like my dream. It was just complete and utter stillness. I still didn't know what that was.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Complete and utter stillness.
Mm-hmm.
What did that feel like?
It's
Complete and utter stillness.
Can't be described. It's the richest feeling of nothing. So full of presence, of love. Even those words don't describe it. It's like complete silence. When you know the silence when you can hear a pin drop, only there's no pin dropping. There's absolutely nothing. My mind completely stopped.
Can you feel that now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fortunately, I learned to talk from that place.
Okay, I have an idea. Gabor is sitting in the control room. Let's invite him in, shall we? And
oh, that would be
just
wonderful.
for the last few minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hello, Gabor.
Hello. Hello, Iain.
So, complete and utter stillness. What happened next in terms of you felt this in the car and then you met and then...
Yes. Well, I knew that it felt like coming home, only I didn't even know those words to say at that time. And then very shortly afterwards, we were at his place and I was sitting with him and I was saying, look, I know that you have something that I'm missing. I know that you're for real, and one of the ways I know that you're for real is because I've been with many fakes and I could tell now what is real, who is a real teacher and who isn't. For some reason, I could tell that you're completely for real. I don't know how I know this, and I don't know what it is. I couldn't label it, I couldn't name it, but I feel you have something. Could you show it to me? So he agreed, and the interesting thing is, up until that point, he never tried to impose any of it on me, or even suggest any book or anything. So we sat together, and I looked into his eyes, like he does with his students, and he told me to feel my hands. And I felt my hands. And I kept looking at him, feeling my hands. And then eventually I started to feel that inner energy in the body, that inner vitality from inside. My mind stopped completely. And I thought, holy gamoly, this is it. This is what they're talking about. I've never felt such amazing stillness. It was a moment of being completely free of the mind, which enabled me to realize that that he was right. Everything I did before was not free of the mind. The mind was still present in all my practices. But now it wasn't. There's no scientific explanation or proof that I can give you, but that was the feeling. And it felt fantastic, but the most important thing that he did for me at that time, which I mentioned before, nobody told me that present moment, or when I was feeling the stillness or being, that was it. He did. He said, now this is it. I said, what do you mean this is it? What do you mean? He says, no, he shook me. He shook me. He said, no, this is it. You don't need any more books. You don't need any more seminars. This is it. Not meaning that this is the end, that there's no more journey or anything like that. But the problem is when you find that, when being recognizes being, there are moments, many people have them, but there's an assumption that there's more. And the assumption that is more closes the door. You open it when you feel, the door opens when you feel your own presence and your own being. But it shuts down as soon as you turn out, but there's something out there. Oh, but there's another teaching there. There's another teaching there. He did not allow me to close that door, because he finally was the one who told me that what I was looking for all along was that.
So, Gabor, this is it.
This is it, yeah.
What does that mean to you now? This is it, in this moment.
It's that natural moment, this natural instant when the being actually recognizes itself. And that's what we can call awakening, if we want. It's the important thing to know about it is that it's an instant, and it does not make anyone a huge giant of a glowing light or mysterious. It's a very non-mysterious event. Perhaps mysterious things will still happen, but the event itself is the simplicity, is utmost simplicity. It does not make me or anyone superior in any way. More simple, yes. So that no time, instant recognition is it. Life tends to swing, and we keep looking. We're there. Many times during the day, we swing, and we perhaps get to that instant, sometimes through accidents or something like that. There are people who almost get into an accident, get into a shock, and all of a sudden the mind stops. So there are many instances when people are present, they just don't know. And the mind keeps searching. Okay, if I find this now, let's go to the next step. What's more? Now, there is more, but not where the mind wants to look. More means to the mind, okay, what else can I build on the assumptions that I've had in the past? This moment is a very intimate moment of the being with the being. This is it, meaning that from here on in, if you wish, and if you get it, then you can turn this switch on. Meaning that now the mind can be operating instead of in an inadequate, crazy environment. Now the mind can learn to operate in a peaceful, wonderful environment. So it's kind of like a switch. When I say this is it, this is the switch we must turn on and off. Ourselves, we must do it ourselves. No one can do it for us.
You see, it's fantastic that after all these years, Nurit found you and you could give her the confirmation that this is it. And of course, there's so many people that search. Nurit's possibly a bit of an extreme story, but there's many others that have, in a lesser way perhaps, searching and searching and searching from one teacher, one guru, one method, one school to another, looking for this is it.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, it's a simple recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a simple recognition, and usually the universe beats us up so that we can have this simple recognition. And what I'm saying is it's not necessary. It can be actually learned now. The directive of the attention, which we have the right to do, I have the right to direct my attention wherever I need to. By directing my attention this way and learning how to do that, I'm reproportioning the attention. Some here, some there. I'm reproportioning the attention with the intelligence of the body.
So it has in a way, it has a technical aspect to it.
Yes.
It is like it's something that you can learn that's very practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's not like and it's not just an aha moment. It might end up with an aha moment, but there's something you can do to help to
Yes.
magnify it.
Yes. Traditionally, there has always been the belief in the schools I went to and people that I know is that this is something mysterious. In the future, we're going towards it. We'll never actually get there, but perhaps we accumulate enough brownie points, good deeds, etc., that
Yes.
one of these days somehow we get there. Mind you, we don't actually define the goal that I want to be awake. But in my own simplicity and in my own humbleness, what I mean by humbleness is I was greatly humbled, beaten down, like really beaten down. I kept asking the question, how could this be passed on? Recognizing the problems of passing it on. And she was a great experiment in the sense of what the mind can throw in, how the mind can respond to these simple things. We have experimented for years, and not finally, but consistently realizing this, yes, this could be taught if the person is willing to be simple. There are prerequisites. The prerequisite is that somehow the person gonna get to a mindset that the traditional approach will not work. Sorry, I don't care how long you have meditated, implicated, procrastinated, whatever, hated. It's not going to work. So with that recognition, if the person is willing to try to allocate their attention without dropping it like, oh no, it's too simple. It's gotta be more complex. My life has huge problems that require huge solutions. How could this simple relocation of attention help my huge problems? So those are the things that a person have to agree to overcome, in a sense. That, of course, I help with that.
Yes, I think it's interesting, going back to, again, my notes about Nurit. One of the things you said when your book was you found freedom from complexity. Mm-hmm. And again, you've just confirmed that it's about simplicity in a way. And you also said, but it has to be sustained. You have the realization, yes, but it's not like, wow, my life is completely different. Right. And I know also you had a lot of kind of historical baggage you had to work through.
Absolutely.
But of course, somehow you've got the fundamental understanding or realization on a practical level, yes, that can help you on your way with all that.
Exactly. I now know how to access it. Yeah. I know what to do. Before, if somebody said to go within, I said, what does that mean? Now I know what to do, and I know that it's mine. I know it's my birthright. I know that it's now. It's not going to be in the future. I don't have to earn it, and nobody else is going to give it to me. It's all those trappings that I had. But, of course, I have to keep practicing it because there's a lot of spiritual concepts that have been built around.
So the important thing is here, you just said no one else is going to give it to you.
That's right.
And, of course, what happened with Gabor was that he didn't give it to you.
Exactly.
He helped you recognize it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you got it, because so many people think that I'm doing the same with Gabor as I did with the other teachers, you know, putting him on a pedestal, okay, yeah, my dear guru, please initiate me. No, it's not like that.
Yes, no, I understand.
My experience is my experience, his is his.
Yes.
But he's helped me because, yes, he lives in that place.
Okay, we're going to have to finish now, but what we're going to do for people watching on the internet, Gabor's going to do a short meditation now, which we'll put on the end of your interview.
Fantastic.
And so if people are interested, they can watch that as well, and maybe also get a confirmation, a taste, whatever we call it. Yeah. So thank you, Nurit, for your story, which was, 40 years of that searching, and often very difficult times. And I admire you for staying with it all that time, and it really wasn't easy. And thank you, Gabor, for coming in and enlightening us at the end.
Oh, you're welcome.
Cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show Nurit's book again, The Blind Leading the Blonde on the Road to Freedom. In a way, that's all we want, isn't it? Really finding the road to freedom. In a way, there's not even a road. There is just freedom. Okay, thank you again. Thank you for watching Conscious TV, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Hi, this is Gabor, Gabor Harsani. I'm doing a short guided meditation for Conscious TV. And my attempt is to guide you to stay in the present moment, actually. We usually call something like this meditation, but I don't like to call it meditation. I would call it rather the reproportioning of attention. Normally our attention goes out and stays out. And that's how we live our life. That's the expectations of others, society, etc. By reproportioning our attention, we keep some of the attention outside and some inside. If there is a consistent attention inside, and the attention is reproportioned for inner and outer, then the mind tends to will have a tendency to line up with the body. And when the mind and the body is in alignment, then you're in the present moment. This present moment is not a small piece of time stolen away from time. It's out of duality. This is something that's your birthright. That's something very natural to every person. And it's beyond time. Or I could also say it's in absolute time. If you're just sitting comfortably somewhere, just keep looking at me. And just relax, nothing major will happen, no expectation. And just for a moment, feel the chair under your butt. Keep looking at me and feel the chair. Keep looking at me and feel your foot. What I mean by feeling your foot is that you are aware that your foot is there. You don't have to look down to see if it's there. You're feeling your foot and you're feeling the vitality in it. You make it shine. For those of you who would be more comfortable in closing your eyes, please do so. Keep looking at me if your eyes is open. And feel your hands. Be aware of your hands. Feel the vitality. Feel it shine. Feel the intensity, the aliveness in your hand. And we'll do the same thing with your chest now. Be aware of your chest. Focus on your chest. Make it shine. Every breath you take will increase the intensity of this shine, will increase the aliveness of your body hundreds and hundredfolds. Every breath you take will increase the intensity. Feel your shoulders. Be aware of them. Feel the vitality, make it shine. Feel your thighs. Feel your knees. Feel the vitality, make it shine. Feel your stomach, make it shine. Every breath you take connects your so-called inner body and increases the intensity of this inner focus, the intensity of this inner aliveness. If your eyes are closed, slowly open your eyes, but before opening your eyes, make a decision that you're going to keep some of that attention within. Of course, if you didn't close your eyes, then you didn't close your eyes. So we are keeping some of the attention within. This is what we mean by the kingdom of God is within. This is the simplicity of it. This is your birthright. This is the beginning of awakening, beginning of spiritual learning. We are now beyond time, or I could say in absolute time. Keep looking and feeling inside. There's no expectations. We're not expecting anything to happen. One very important thing, this is not a meditation. Your mind will tend to tell you this is the same as a meditation. It's always now, it's always now, it's always now. A meditation is in time, has a beginning and an end. This is the reproportioning of your attention. I don't know what to call it. I will probably call it reproportioning. If I must call it something, the less I try to call it something, the better. Just be with me. This is the so-called knocking on the door that Jesus talks about. And if your hearing has shifted a little bit, then the door is opening. This is the you that's already within you. I didn't invent this. I didn't do anything to you. I'm simply sitting here looking at you. What's in me is in you. And in every living thing. From this peaceful, nurturing perspective, it's not possible to have any harmful thoughts towards anyone or anything. Just keep being with me. No expectation. Remember to keep some of your attention inside. Any body part will do. For most people, the awareness of your hands from inside is the simplest. But you might find that for you it's the foot or the chest. It doesn't really matter. One touch, just one touch within is worth thousands of thousands and thousands of hours of doing something without. It almost seems like you're willing to open the door to God, paying attention this way. So now God, the universe, can be with you. Now your mind and my mind can operate from a different context. This is a contextual shift. You will not lose your memory. You will not use your ability. You're not going to be irresponsible. It's a perfectly functional space. Stay here with me. What I'm saying is not as important as your inner attention. You have to, if you want, focus within. No one can do it for you. But it's easy. If you look within, you try to go within, it's very, very easy. Why should your birthright be hard? Or why should your birthright take 20, 30, 40 years to deserve by accumulating good deeds? It's yours now. You can operate from this space. It's very functional. This is your being. This is how we were when we were children. It's not complex. It's not mine. It's not yours. By doing this, you're not going to be a superior person. Neither an inferior one, of course. Life is going to be so much easier. Challenges will come, but you will know how to approach them. Do this simple thing of reproportioning as frequently as you can during the day while you're doing anything else. Standing in line in the store is a great way to practice. washing dishes, washing your car, walking, talking. Try this as a listening skill. Someone has a tendency to talk too much, just focus within, just be. And you will see magic happening in your relationships. It's yours, you can only have it now. You can't have this in the future. Now. And now. Put this on, put this tape on as frequently as possible. Practice it, and most importantly, practice it in your everyday life. Don't allocate some time to practice. Whenever you think of it, whenever it gets to you, now, 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 reproportion, reproportion, reproportion. I wish for you to be able to maintain this natural state that I cannot call a state. With a little bit of attention and intention, you will be able to maintain this. God bless you, and all the love to you and to yours.